Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called The Fox Spirit's Daughter's Wedding. In the county of Liqing, there was a scholar surnamed Yin. Let's call him Mr. Yin for now. When Mr. Yin was a child, his family was very poor, but he was incredibly brave and knowledgeable. In the county, there was an old mansion belonging to a prestigious and wealthy family. It covered several acres of land and was adorned with a continuous series of pavilions, terraces, and towers. However, this mansion was often haunted, and many strange occurrences took place within its walls. As a result, no one dared to live there, and over time, it fell into disrepair. With the passage of time, the mansion became overgrown with weeds and thorns, and even during broad daylight, no one dared to enter it. One day, Mr. Yin and his friends from the county were drinking together. Someone made a playful remark, saying, "If anyone can spend a night in that haunted mansion, we'll all chip in to treat him to a meal, how about that?" When Mr. Yin heard this, he jumped up and said to everyone, "What's so difficult about that? I'll go there tonight." His friends laughed and showed their support. That night, Mr. Yin took a mat and headed towards the mansion. His friends accompanied him to the mansion's entrance, jokingly saying, "We'll wait outside the gate for a while. If you see any ghosts or fox spirits, just shout for help." Mr. Yin laughed and replied, "If there are really ghosts or fox spirits and such creatures, I will catch them and show you as proof." With that, he confidently walked inside. Mr. Yin entered the mansion and found that the courtyard was covered with tall sedge grass, so dense that it obscured the paths. Weeds and mugwort grew densely as well. It was the beginning of the month, and the crescent moon was not very bright. Fortunately, in the dim yellowish moonlight, he could still vaguely make out the doors and windows. Mr. Yin groped his way for a long time until he reached the final building. He climbed to the top of the building and found it smooth and clean, quite comfortable, so he decided to sleep there. He raised his head and looked at the moon to the west, noticing that the moonlight was dim, with only a faint glimmer visible along the mountainside. Mr. Yin sat there for a while and didn't notice anything unusual. He chuckled to himself, thinking that the rumors circulating outside were not to be believed. After a while, feeling a bit tired, Mr. Yin lay down on the ground, using a stone as a pillow, and gazed at the stars of the cowherd and the weaver girl in the sky. In the middle of the night, Mr. Yin was extremely tired and on the verge of falling asleep. Suddenly, he heard a chaotic noise of footsteps downstairs, and someone was ascending the stairs. Mr. Yin pretended to be asleep, squinting to sneak a look. He noticed a person in a blue robe coming up from downstairs, carrying a lotus lantern in hand. When the person spotted Mr. Yin, they were startled and involuntarily took a few steps back. He said to the person behind him, "There's a stranger sleeping here." The person below asked, "Who is it?" The one in the blue robe replied, "I don't know him." After a while, an old man also ascended the stairs. He approached Mr. Een and inspected him closely. He then said to the man in the blue robe, "This is Mr. Een, the imperial minister. He's already in a deep sleep. Let's go about our business. I've heard that Mr. Een is easygoing and not particular, so he probably won't blame us." Subsequently, more people went up the stairs, and the doors to the building were all wide open. After a while, with more people bustling around, the upper floor was as brightly lit as during the daytime. Mr. Een turned over lightly and sneezed. The old man, hearing him awaken, quickly came out and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter is getting married tonight. We didn't expect to find you resting here. We've disturbed you with our numerous guests, so please don't take offense." Mr. Een hurriedly helped the old man up and said, "I didn't know, it's a joyful occasion in your family tonight. I'm truly embarrassed for not bringing a gift to congratulate you." The old man smiled and replied, "Having a distinguished guest like you here to suppress evil spirits and dispel bad luck is already a stroke of good fortune for us. If you could grace us by taking a seat and joining the wedding feast, it would be an even greater honor for us." Mr. Een was delighted and readily agreed. They chatted and laughed as they entered the attic, which was beautifully decorated. Soon, a woman in her 40s came out to greet them. The old man introduced her to Mr. Een, saying, "This is my wife." Mr. Een quickly stepped forward to pay his respects. Before long, the sound of drums and music filled the air, and a messenger arrived, announcing, "The groom has arrived." The old man rushed to welcome him, and Mr. Een also stood up to await the groom's arrival. In a short while, a procession of red lanterns led the groom into the room. The groom, a young man of about 17 or 18, was handsome and elegant. The old man asked him to greet the honored guests first. The groom approached Mr. Een, and Mr. Een gave a half bow in response. Then, the old man and his son-in-law exchanged bows. After the formalities were complete, everyone sat down for the feast. After some time, a group of elegantly dressed maidservants began bustling about, and the tables were filled with food and wine. The atmosphere was festive, with the dazzling tableware and dishes reflecting golden light. As everyone gathered, they enjoyed food and conversation. After a while, the old man sent a maid to bring the bride. The maid agreed and went inside. However, they waited for a long time, but no one came out. Helpless, the old man had to go in person to urge them. Eventually, several maids and an old woman escorted the bride out. As the bride walked, her golden ornaments jingled, and a fragrance resembling orchids or musk emanated from her. The old man had his daughter bow to the guests, and after her greetings, she sat next to her mother. Mr. Een stole a glance at the bride and saw that she wore a phoenix hairpin on her head and pearl earrings on her ears. Her beauty was unparalleled, truly a rare sight. After some time, the old man and his son-in-law raised golden goblets to toast the guests. These goblets were quite large and seemed capable of holding a lot of wine. Mr. Een thought it might be useful to take one back as evidence for his friends, so he discreetly placed a golden goblet in his sleeve. Pretending to be drunk, he slouched at the table, appearing to fall asleep. Everyone chuckled and said, "It seems Mr. Een is quite drunk." Not long after, Mr. Een heard that the groom was preparing to leave. Once again, there was a burst of music, and the guests started to depart. After the banquet ended, the host began clearing the tableware and noticed that one of the golden goblets was missing. He ordered his servants to search everywhere, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Some of the servants privately speculated that Mr. Een, who had been pretending to sleep, might have taken the golden goblet. However, the old man quickly stopped them from discussing it further, fearing that Mr. Een might overhear. After a while, both inside and outside the building fell into silence once more, and Mr. Een finally got up. However, it was pitch dark, with no source of light, except for the lingering scent of cosmetics and alcohol in the air. Mr. Een saw that the eastern sky was already turning pale, so he calmly descended the stairs. He checked his sleeve and found the golden goblet still there. As he reached the main gate, his friends had been waiting there for a while. They didn't believe that Mr. Een had spent the entire night inside the mansion, suspecting that he had left during the night and returned in the morning. To prove his story, Mr. Een showed them the golden goblet. After seeing the exquisite goblet, they were astonished and asked Mr. Een to recount his experiences from the previous night. So, Mr. Een proceeded to tell them about what he had seen and heard. His friends also found it hard to believe that a destitute scholar like Mr. Een could afford such a golden goblet, and they began to trust his words. Later, Mr. Een passed the imperial examination and became an official in the Feiqiu region. There was a prominent family in the local area surnamed Xu who hosted a banquet in his honor. During the feast, the host ordered the servants to bring large wine goblets, but they took a long time to do so. Finally, a young servant boy approached the host, covering his mouth, and whispered something in his ear. Upon hearing the boy's words, the expression on Zhu's face turned to anger. He gave some orders, and the young servant boy left. After a while, the servants placed large golden goblets in front of the guests. Mr. Een picked up one of the golden goblets and examined it closely. To his surprise, the style and intricate carvings on the goblet were identical to the one he had hidden in his sleeve many years ago. He felt puzzled and asked the host about the origin of the goblet. Zhu, the host, explained. These golden goblets, a total of 8, were commissioned by my ancestors when they served as officials in the capital. They have been cherished heirlooms in our family for generations. Today, as a mark of respect for your presence, esteemed county magistrate, I had the servants retrieve them from storage. However, the servants informed me that there were only 7 left in the chest. I initially suspected that one of the servants had stolen one, but when I personally inspected it just now, I found that the 10 years' worth of accumulated dust on the box remained completely undisturbed. This matter is truly perplexing. Mr. Een chuckled and said, "It seems that this goblet has turned into a divine being and flown away. Nonetheless, a cherished heirloom passed down through generations must not be lost. I have a goblet here that closely resembles yours, and I'd like to present it to you." After the banquet, Mr. Een returned to his official residence and sent the goblet to Zhu personally. Upon receiving it and examining it closely, Zhu was astonished. He came to Mr. Yin's residence to express his gratitude. Curious about the origin of this particular goblet, Zhu inquired, and Mr. Yin recounted the events that had transpired several years ago. It was only then that everyone realized that even items located hundreds of miles away could be procured by the fox spirits. However, they did not dare to keep these treasures for themselves and return them after use. In this story, the elderly man and his family, including his son-in-law, are all fox spirits. However, they are not evil and do not harm humans. Despite their habit of borrowing others' treasures, they always return them. In ancient China, folklore believed that many small animals, after undergoing long periods of cultivation, could transform into humans. These creatures not only possessed human emotions but also adopted human lifestyles. Surprisingly, they were often even more friendly than humans. Guided by this belief, people treated animals with greater kindness and reverence, appreciating the sanctity of life. All right. That's all for today's ghostly tale. The Fox Spirit's Daughter's Wedding. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.